My son stood in my kitchen and said calmly, "We already found a buyer. Start packing." Just like that. No. How are you holding up? Mom. No. Do you need anything? Just a thick manila folder and a deadline. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I poured myself another cup of cold coffee and said, "That's interesting." Because Brian had no idea, no clue what his father left behind, no clue who I really was. But he was about to learn. My name is Helen Carter. I'm 62 years old. 2 months ago, I buried my husband, Peter, the only man I've ever loved. We lived quietly in Boise, Idaho, in a 3-bedroom house with a vegetable garden and a squeaky porch swing we never got around to fixing. People think I'm fragile, old, soft, easy to manipulate. And for most of my life, they were right. But what they didn't know, what even I didn't know, is that Peter had been preparing me for war. Quietly, patiently, for years. Before I tell you how I turned everything around, please like this video. Leave a comment about where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. Because trust me, this isn't the story of a grieving widow. This is a story about reclaiming power. Let's begin. That night, I sat alone in Peter's old recliner, the one with a tear in the armrest he swore he'd fix someday. The house was too quiet. No Jeopardy theme music. No humming from the kitchen. Just me, surrounded by casseroles from neighbors I barely knew, and silence that stretched like fog. On the coffee table sat a folded blanket Sophie had left the last time she visited. She was 17 then, still giggling about her new driver's license and asking for chocolate chip pancakes at midnight. I couldn't remember the last time she'd come by just to see me. Not because Tracy told her to. I kept thinking about what Brian said. This is what's best for everyone. He didn't ask if I was sleeping at night. He didn't ask how I was coping. He asked how fast I could vacate. A week earlier, I'd gone into Peter's study to start organizing his papers. It felt wrong at first, opening drawers he'd always guarded, like they were sacred. But Peter wasn't a secretive man. He was a prepared one. That's when I found the folder. Thick, neatly labeled. His handwriting on the tab. If something happens. Inside. Bank statements, investment records, passwords, and a deed. Not for our Idaho house, but for a villa in Marbella, Spain. At first, I thought it was some scam. But the documents were real. There were emails from a property management firm, receipts, a contract signed and dated 6 months before he died, and a note from Peter. For when you're ready to live for you. Not for them. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the papers, my heart racing. Peter had bought us a retirement home. Not just a fantasy, a real one. A place by the sea, with lemon trees and blue shutters. He never mentioned it. But knowing him, that made perfect sense. Peter had always believed in teaching through silence. When Brian asked him for money years ago to open a Sure Thing smoothie franchise, Peter said no. Firmly. The fight lasted months. Brian called him selfish, Peter said. Character builds in scarcity. I thought it was cold. But now, I understood. He was teaching boundaries. He was preparing me for this moment. I reread the deed 3 times. Still not believing it. It was fully paid off. Not a mortgage. Not a timeshare. A house. My house. In Spain. Waiting. But Peter wasn't done. In that same drawer, behind a photo of us in Venice, was a small brass key. A post-it note stuck to the back said, "Villa. Pilar has the spare. Pilar." A quick search through Peter's email revealed the rest. Pilar Santos. Neighbor. Gardener. Housekeeper. A local woman who'd been tending the property since he bought it. She emailed monthly updates, photos of bougainvillea climbing the walls, notes about paint touch-ups. She signed off every email with, "The house misses you both." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That same day, I received a message from Tracy. "Hey, Mom. Brian told me about the house stuff. Sophie's so excited about you moving in. Think how cozy it'll be? Can't wait to plan meals together. Maybe you can help with laundry too. I've been drowning. Love you." I read the text 4 times. Not once did she ask how I felt. Not once did she say, "I miss you," or "How are you holding up?" It was logistics. Convenience. Delegation disguised as love. That night, I called Elaine Barker Peters' estate attorney. She'd handled everything years ago when we did our wills. I didn't tell the kids. I just scheduled a meeting. The next morning, I put on my best black sweater and the earrings Peter gave me for our 30th anniversary, and I drove downtown. Elaine's office smelled like expensive leather and eucalyptus. She was exactly the kind of woman who intimidated Tracy Crisp. Silver-streaked hair, sharp eyes, not a second of her day wasted. I slid the folder across her desk. Her brows lifted. "So? You found it. You knew." Peter was meticulous. He created a living trust that names you as sole owner of all assets. The house, the accounts, the property in Spain, and the kids, only listed under the life insurance. Nothing else transfers automatically. I swallowed. They've been planning to sell the house. Elaine's voice was calm, but firm. They can't, not without your signature. Any arrangements they're making are completely baseless. You hold all legal authority. I nodded slowly, the knot in my chest beginning to loosen for the first time in weeks. Elaine reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a smaller envelope. "One more thing. Peter asked me to give this to you 30 days after his death. Today's that day." It was a handwritten letter, yellowed just slightly at the edges. My name on the front, in Peter's careful script. I opened it with shaking hands. Peter's words hit harder than any confrontation my kids could throw at me. In that letter, he told me exactly what to do. Not with instructions, but with love. And now that I knew what I held, I had a decision to make. They wanted a week. Confused widow. They were about to get something else entirely. Peter's letter was only 2 pages, but it changed everything. "Helen, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry you're facing this alone. I know the kids will push. They love you in their way, but they don't see you for who you really are. But I do, and I trust you to protect what we built. Don't let guilt confuse you. You've done enough. Now live for you." At the bottom, there was a short postscript. "The key to the Spanish house is in the desk. Pilar has kept everything perfect. Go when you're ready. I hope that's soon." I folded the letter and tucked it into my purse like it was armor. Because it was, as soon as I got home, I made 2 phone calls. One to the property manager in Spain, the other to a local moving company. The first call was short. Pilar answered in warm, clear English. "Senora Carter, I've been expecting you. The house is ready any time. The garden is in bloom." The second call took longer. I scheduled a pickup for a few select boxes and furniture pieces, nothing too obvious. I wasn't fleeing. Not yet. I was positioning. The next morning, Tracy called. Not to check on me. Not to ask how my meeting with the lawyer went. No. "Hey, Mom. I've been thinking about how to set up the basement for you. I can probably clear out the treadmill and the holiday boxes. Brian said you didn't seem enthusiastic, but I told him you'd come around." "You always do." I stared at the phone, stunned. "Come around." I always do. It was like they had a version of me in their heads, and they were committed to keeping her there. Compliant. Cooperative. Grateful? And don't worry about cost, Tracy added. We figured we could cover the basement remodel by taking it out of the house sale proceeds. Win-win. My voice stayed calm, but something in me had already cracked. They weren't helping me. They were rehoming me, like a liability. I didn't respond. I just hung up. The next message came from Brian. 2 hours later. Gregory's client is getting impatient. He wants an answer on the house by tomorrow. This is a solid offer. Mom, don't mess this up for everyone. Everyone? Again. That evening, I poured a glass of red wine and opened Sophie's contact on my phone. No messages since Christmas. Not one personal text. And yet Tracy said she was so excited to have me closer. I stared at our last exchange. It was a group thank you message. No warmth. No emojis. No private note to say she missed me. But I had been sending Sophie $500 a month since she started college. Quietly. Consistently. She thought the money came from Tracy's budget. Tracy let her believe that. The next morning, I went into Brian's childhood room and pulled out a few boxes. His baseball glove. Some trophies. Drawings from 3rd grade. He'd never asked for them, but I figured he might once they were delivered to his doorstep. I did the same in Tracy's old room. Her childhood piano books. The porcelain doll collection she used to cherish. A few framed certificates she hadn't looked at in decades. Then I wrote their names in black Sharpie on each box. And I smiled. Because while they were scrambling to get me out of my house, I was carefully preparing to return their memories. It was time to remind them. I wasn't a relic. That night, I received one final call. Brian? Again. I just got a notification that a moving truck's been scheduled at your address. What's going on? I'm sending you your things, I replied. What? You're serious. Perfectly. There was a long pause. Then that tone, the one he used when he was 17 and trying to lie his way out of trouble. Okay. Can we just talk about this? I didn't answer. I let the silence do the work. The next morning, the moving truck pulled into my driveway. Right on schedule. 2 men got out. Professional, efficient. I handed them the delivery addresses. Brian's place on Maple Street. Tracy's condo on Pine Avenue. Tell them these are gifts from their mother. Memories they might want to keep safe. One of the movers, Rodriguez, gave me a small, knowing smile. 20 years in the moving business. He'd probably seen it all. Then Brian's car showed up. I watched him from the window, standing next to the boxes, absolutely dumbfounded. And I knew the timing was perfect. Brian was about to storm inside. Tracy was about to call in a panic. They thought they had power over me, but they were playing checkers on a chessboard I'd been setting up for weeks. I had the next move, and it was going to be checkmate. Brian didn't knock. He banged. I opened the door slowly, deliberately. I wore the red blouse. Peter always loved the one Brian once called too loud for someone your age. My hair was curled, makeup done, and my posture said everything before I even spoke. He didn't say hello. What the hell is going on? Mom. Good morning. Brian. His eyes darted past me to the labeled boxes in the hallway. You're moving out. Just like that. No discussion. No, I said calmly. You asked me to move. I'm following through. This isn't what we meant. It's exactly what you meant. You wanted me out of my house. Remember, I'm just helping you make room for my exit. He stepped inside, holding that manila folder like a weapon. It was thicker now, probably full of contingency plans and property comps. Gregory's client needs an answer today. You're cutting it close? Let me ask you something. Brian. I walked over to Peter's old recliner and sat, crossing my legs. When you discussed my future over dinner with Tracy, Did either of you ask how I was doing? He blinked. What? Did you ask if I was sleeping? If I felt lonely? If I'd eaten anything besides casseroles this week? Or did you spend the entire night calculating how much money you could carve out of my husband's death? He went pale. I didn't stop. Let's talk numbers. That offer, Gregory brought $350. 000 for this house. No mortgage. After your imaginary closing costs, you and Tracy each walk away with about $160. 000. Is that what you were hoping for? His mouth opened and closed like a fish. I continued before he could lie. You assumed I was broke. You told Tracy I couldn't afford my medication. You built a case against me based on nothing. Or rather, based on what you wanted to be true. That's not fair. No, I said. Fair would have been asking me what I needed. What I wanted. His shoulders dropped, but his eyes were calculating. So what's the plan then? Mom, you stay here alone, wasting space. Let this house fall apart. That's not sustainable. This house doesn't belong to you. Neither does my future. He reached for the folder again. We can work this out. Maybe you don't have to move in with Tracy. Maybe we find you a condo. Something manageable. Manageable for who? Brian. You. So you can stop pretending your concern is anything but financial. Just then, my phone buzzed. Tracy's name lit up the screen. I answered, placing it on speaker. Mom, I just got home and there's a piano on my porch. Are you losing it? This isn't funny. Hello to you too. Tracy. Seriously. What is going on? That's the piano you begged for when you were 8. You said you wanted it back someday. I don't have room for it. Then get rid of it. Or keep it. It's yours. Brian said you're not selling the house. Correct? Silence. Then Tracy's voice turned sharp. We already told Sophie you were moving in. She was excited. I looked at Brian, who couldn't meet my eyes. When was the last time Sophie called me? How should I know? The last time she called me was December 15th. She wanted money for a spring break trip. She didn't ask how I was coping. Didn't even mention Peter. Tracy exhaled. She's in college. They're self-absorbed at that age. She also thinks you're paying for her education. More silence. Tracy, I've sent Sophie $500 every month since she started school. That's $12. 000. Directly from my pension. That doesn't cover everything. That's not the point. Brian sat down, stunned. You've been sending her money. Because I love her. Because she's my granddaughter. But I'm not just a bank account. And love. Real love. Shouldn't come with a receipt. I ended the call. Then I looked at Brian and said something I hadn't said to either of them in years. I'm done. His voice cracked. You're abandoning us. I'm releasing you. There's a difference. He stood, frustrated. So that's it. You're just leaving. I'm not running away. I'm choosing to start over. Where are you going? Somewhere warm. I didn't tell him Spain. Not yet. He didn't deserve that much access. When he left, I sat down at Peter's desk and opened my laptop. 20 minutes later, I had a flight booked. One way. Boise to Madrid. Pilar had confirmed everything. The house was ready. The garden was blooming. I packed 2 suitcases, one with clothes, one with me, my journals, a few old photos, Peter's watch, and a letter addressed to Sophie. Before I left, I taped a note to the fridge. Don't worry. You won't have to remodel that basement after all. Then I locked the door, and I didn't look back. They thought they'd orchestrated my life. But this wasn't the end of a chapter. This was the beginning of my real story. And it was time to turn the page. The flight to Madrid was long and quiet. I sat by the window, watching the Atlantic stretch beneath me, a silver blue ribbon that somehow felt like a bridge between the woman I used to be and the woman I was becoming. The seat beside me was empty. Fitting. For the first time in my life, I was going somewhere that wasn't about them. Not about Peter. Not about the kids. Not about being needed. Just me. I didn't cry. Not once. Not even during takeoff. Instead, I reread Peter's letter, underlined 2 sentences. You've done enough. Now live for you. When the plane landed, the customs officer asked my reason for travel. Starting over, I said. She stamped my passport and smiled. Bienvenida a España. Outside the terminal, Pilar was waiting. A short woman with warm eyes and a scarf tied neatly around her shoulders. She held a hand-painted sign that said, Senora Carter. I almost broke. She hugged me like she'd known me for years. Russell told me so much about you, she said, using Peter's middle name. You are exactly how he described. Strong eyes. She drove us through narrow streets lined with white buildings and orange trees. It smelled like sunlight and olives, and something I hadn't felt in months, peace. When we reached the house, I forgot how to speak. Terracotta roof. Blue shutters. Bougainvillea spilling over the gate like ribbons. And the sea just beyond the terrace. Sparkling and infinite. He chose well, I whispered. He chose for you, Pilar replied. Now it is yours. Inside, the house was bright and simple. Wooden beams. Tile floors. A kitchen that looked out over lemon trees. I could hear birds and waves, and somewhere, faint church bells. No noise. No voices trying to dictate my life. Just breath. I spent that first night sleeping with the windows open, letting the ocean breeze fill the room. No text messages. No calls. I turned my phone off as soon as I'd landed. But in the morning, curiosity got the better of me. I turned it on. 17 missed calls. 12 voicemails. 8 text messages. All variations of the same theme. Mom, we're worried. You've disappeared. This is childish. Please come back. And then, the one that told me everything I needed to know. Don't expect us to come running when you realize how lonely you are. That came from Tracy. I stared at it for a long time. Not angry, just clear. They thought I'd come crawling back. They were wrong. I left the phone charging and made myself coffee with a mocha pot Pilar had left on the stove. She'd also stocked the fridge cheese, eggs, fruit, wine, a loaf of fresh bread still warm in its wrapper. On the second morning, I walked into town, bought a journal and a pen, sat at a cafe overlooking the harbor and started writing. Not about revenge, about clarity, about motherhood, about how easy it is to forget yourself when everyone else believes you belong to them. I wrote for hours. I lost track of time. That night, I poured myself a glass of red wine and stepped out onto the terrace. And that's when my phone rang again. Sophie, for a moment. I didn't move, just stared at the screen. Then I picked up Grandma. Oh my God! Finally, her voice cracked. She sounded frantic. I've been trying to reach you for days. Mom won't tell me anything. Uncle Brian says you had a meltdown. Are you okay? I waited. Let her fill the silence. Are you safe? I'm fine. Sweetheart, I said. Better than I've been in a long time. Where are you? Somewhere peaceful. She hesitated. Grandma? Mom told me you've been sending me money for school. Every month. That it didn't come from her like I thought. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? I sighed, sitting down. The sun was setting over the water, casting everything in a soft orange glow. Because I didn't want you to feel obligated. I wanted you to focus on being 20. But I should have known. She said, I should have asked. I feel so ashamed. You shouldn't, I told her. You were told a version of me that wasn't true. That's not your fault. There was a pause. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. They made me believe you were fragile. That I shouldn't call too much. That it would overwhelm you. I know. They lied to both of us. Yes, they did. Can I come see you? She asked. I don't care where you are. I want to be with you. For real this time. I smiled. The kind of smile that starts in your chest and makes its way to your fingertips. Spring break is in 3 weeks. Right? I'll change my plans. I'll cancel Cancun. Please. Grandma, I want to see the real you. Then come, I said. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. They thought leaving meant losing. But sometimes, walking away is how you win everything that matters. And in 3 weeks, I'd find out just how much I had left to gain. 3 weeks later, I stood outside the arrivals terminal at Malaga Airport, scanning the crowd. And then I saw her, Sophie. She was different, not in a dramatic, Hollywood way. Not some radical transformation, but there was something quieter about her. Like she'd shed a version of herself on the plane ride over. No designer handbag, no sorority hoodie, just jeans, sneakers, and a plain white t-shirt. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun, sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked like herself, but without the performance. Grandma, she cried, and ran straight into my arms. Her hug was tight. Desperate. Not the quick, polite kind you give at holidays. This was full body, eyes closed. I missed you with my whole heart kind of hug. We stood like that for a minute, just holding on. Let me look at you, I said, pulling back slightly. She smiled, no filters. No polish. You look amazing, she said. Your hair, it's shorter. And you're tan. You look free. I said simply. Now, come on. You've got a terrace to see. On the drive back to the house, she kept her face turned to the window, marveling at everything. Are you even real right now? This place is out of a dream. Your grandfather thought so too. She glanced at me. Quiet? He knew. Didn't he? He did. He knew exactly what I'd need. When we arrived at the villa, Pilar was waiting with a tray of fresh fruit and warm pastries. She hugged Sophie like she was family, which, in Spain, she now was. That evening, we sat on the terrace, watching the sea turn shades of copper and lavender. Pilar had made paella, and Sophie couldn't stop raving about it. Okay, she said after her second helping. Tell me everything. So I did. I told her about the phone calls, the assumptions, the pressure, the lie about being broke, the villa, the key, the letter from Peter. I told her the whole truth. She didn't interrupt. She just listened, eyes wide, jaw clenched. When I finished, she sat back in her chair, arms crossed over her chest. I can't believe them. I said. But now I don't have to. They used you, she whispered. They used me. I thought Mom was sacrificing so much for my education. I told people that. I thanked her for it. You weren't the only one misled. She shook her head. She made me feel guilty for wanting to call you. Said you were fragile. That you'd cling too hard. That I needed to give you space. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. That wasn't your fault. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know how lonely you were. I just believed them. We all believe what's easiest when we're scared to look closer. She nodded slowly. I don't want to be like them. Then don't be. We sat in silence, the waves lapping gently against the rocks below. Then she said something I didn't expect. I want to stay longer. What about school? I already emailed my professors. I can finish the semester remotely. Papers, exams, everything online. You thought this through. I've been thinking it through since the night I called you. And what did your mother say? She smiled, tight and sharp. That I was selfish. That I was making things worse. That if you were having a breakdown, I'd only make it worse by being there. And what did you tell her? I asked her. If you were really breaking down, why hadn't she gotten on a plane? Why hadn't she even tried to call you directly? I raised my eyebrows. And she couldn't answer, because the truth would have exposed everything. Sophie stood and walked to the edge of the terrace. The wind caught her hair, lifting it gently from her shoulders. They didn't just lie to you, she said. They lied about you. Yes, they told me you were weak, that I needed to protect them from you. And I believed it. I didn't ask questions. I just let them talk over you. I joined her at the railing. But you're not weak, she said, looking at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You're the strongest person I've ever met. That night, we stayed up late. We made tea and opened old photo albums I'd brought in my suitcase. She asked questions, real ones. What was your dream job? Did you ever want to live in a city? What made you fall in love with Grandpa? I answered all of them. We laughed. We cried. We started to know each other not as roles, but as people. And somewhere between stories about Peter's terrible snoring and the time I almost ran over a mailbox in high school, I felt something settle in me. Not grief, not guilt, just peace. I'd spent decades giving everything I had to people who saw my love as a resource, not a relationship. But now, in the most unexpected way, I was finally receiving something back. Not just respect, connection, and a chance to be known. We didn't go to the beach that day. We stayed in, baked bread, and danced barefoot in the kitchen to Spanish jazz. Sophie didn't know the words, but she hummed along anyway, laughing each time she stepped on my toes. It was quiet joy, the kind that sneaks up on you. That night, after she went to bed, I stepped out onto the terrace alone. The sea was calm, the sky ink dark, scattered with stars. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked once, then fell silent again, and I finally cried. Not because I was sad, not because I missed Peter more that night than any other, but because for the first time since he passed, I could feel him with me. Not just in the house, or the furniture, or the garden he'd imagined, but in me. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. The next morning, I wrote letters. To Tracy, to Brian, to Sophie, though hers. I handed to her personally. They were not apologies, not explanations, just the truth. I will always love you. But love without respect is not a home I can live in anymore. I didn't expect replies. I didn't write them to open a door. I wrote them to close one with grace. Sophie read hers in silence. She didn't cry. She just nodded, folded it carefully, and slipped it into her journal. I'll remember every word, she said. A few days later, I got a message from Elaine, my attorney back in Idaho. Just FYI, Brian tried to access your trust. Claimed you were mentally compromised. He's already received a formal response. He won't be trying again. I didn't react. It didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was the email I received later that week. From Tracy. It was long, rambling, defensive, laced with half apologies. I didn't know how much I resented you until you left. I'm sorry if I made you feel like a burden. I thought I was doing the right thing. But the most telling line was near the end. Sophie's choosing you. I don't know what that means for our relationship. That was it. Not. How can I fix this? Not. What did I miss? Just fear of losing control. I didn't reply. Some silences aren't meant to be broken. Instead, I kept building a life. Sophie and I started a morning routine coffee. Then writing time. She worked on her class assignments while I wrote essays, journal entries, and sometimes just lists of things I never said out loud. We'd go for long walks through the village, learning names of neighbors and watching fishermen mend their nets in the afternoons. Pilar introduced us to everyone as the American girls, which made Sophie beam every time. One evening, I asked her, "Do you think you'll go back?" She looked at me for a long time. "To the States. To your old life." "No, I'll visit. But I think I've seen enough of that version of me. And the new version," she smiled, "still in draft mode. But this feels like a good place to rewrite." Peter would have liked that. Not just because he loved words, but because he always believed in second drafts and second chances. I still miss him. Every day. But grief isn't a hole you fall into anymore. It's a river. Quiet. Constant. But not dragging me under. I don't know what comes next. I might take a class. Learn Spanish properly. Open a small cafe with a bookshelf in the back. Sophie thinks it should be called Helen's. I said that was too on the nose. She disagrees. We'll see. But one thing I do know, I am not afraid of starting over. Not anymore. If you've watched all the way to this point, thank you. I hope this story reminds you that it's never too late to reclaim your space. That love should never require your silence. That motherhood doesn't mean martyrdom. And that sometimes, the bravest thing you'll ever do is walk away calmly, without warning, and build something beautiful from the ground up. So, I'll leave you with this question. Who are you without the roles other people wrote for you? Let me know in the comments. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because maybe the next story will be yours.